if you don't get anything else out of the time that I've been here, I hope that everybody here will know where the Great Commission is, from the youngest child to the oldest person. I hope that, my prayer is that not only would you know where it's at, but also know how to quote it. I've shared a story with you all several times, being in China in front of 25 or 30 kids, where when I got ready to quote the Great Commission, they jumped to their feet and they shouted it in Mandarin Chinese to me. And I stood there and bawled like a baby, because I thought in the church in America, most people would not even know where to find the Great Commission. And the Great Commission is a great permission. And my title of my sermon today, when Rod asked me the other day what it was, is the Great Commission, are you a goer or sender? Every one of us has been instructed by Jesus to do something. And, I had a friend that was an Assembly of God pastor, and he came to camp, and he and I got a friendship going, and his church was not doing very well. He had one of those churches where all they wanted to do was complain. He couldn't do anything right. He had left industry and became an Assembly of God pastor. He had 2 or 3 little girls, had a beautiful wife, and he was really trying hard. And he and I got a friendship, and I asked him, I said, would you like to go to Oklahoma with me? He said, I'd love that. And he went to the kind of issues with me. Of course, we preach a little different than the Assembly of God stuff does. But Artie got up as our current director right now, and Artie talked about kids and ministering to kids and what it takes to feed kids and take care of kids. And I'll never forget, we walked down by what we call Big John, this humongous bathroom we don't use anymore that they shut down a year or so ago. But we were standing down next to Big John, and Randy's standing down there just bawling like a baby. I walked over to him and I said, what's up with you, man? What's the deal? He said, that sermon touched me. He said, I am tired of fighting those people. I've been there 7 or 8 years. And he said, all they do is complain. He said, I'm tired of fighting them. I want to come help you. I said, well, buddy, we need your help. Stay engaged at the church, and you can come help at camp. I'll never forget Dale. He came out and he was really into golf. He was one of the ones, our first golf weekend. We had a little putt-putt thing we had, and it fell apart, and he put it back together. Of course, it's falling apart now. I don't even know where stuff is. But he gathered enough stuff up to make our putt-putt thing, and he made a sign for that year. It was 2009. It was, get on board and stay on track. And it was a picture of a train. And he made our sign to put out by the gate. He was just ate up. He went up to Salvation Army in Indianapolis and walked in the door at this thrift store, and he brought 9 sets of clubs home for the kids to have their own set of clubs for us to go down to Cozy Acres. And he absolutely just loved going down to Cozy and playing golf and doing that. Him and my little brother hit it off. And Randy was just a fantastic brother of the Lord. It was just so neat to have him around. And every waking moment that he wasn't at home, and of course he did his office hours and stuff at the church, but he would come out to the camp, and you could just see when he walked on the grounds, he would just beam. But I'll never forget, he came and helped me with senior high week. And after camp was over, we were in Shell Station in North Vernon, and he was standing in behind this garbage can by the gas pumps, and he looked over at me and he said, I don't understand something. And I said, well, what don't you understand? He said, during your week of camp, we baptized 8 kids. And he said, I've been at the Assembly of God in North Vernon for 7 or 8 years, and he said, we haven't baptized anybody. I looked at him and I said, what? He said, we haven't baptized anybody. And he said, I just don't understand you baptizing all these people. I said, well, Randy, if I found out tomorrow that I had cancer, and I knew that I was going to live 3 weeks or 3 months or even 3 years, and I asked you to do something here at church camp, and I was serious about what I was doing. It wasn't some Dan Corbin joke. And I asked you to carry out one thing, would you do it? And he looked across that trash can at me and he said, Dan Corbin, I would die for you. I'd take a bullet for you. I said, Randy, I know that. I said, what was Jesus' last words on the earth? And he kind of looked at me for a minute and said, well, I don't know. And here's a pastor of an Assembly of God church, and he doesn't know the last marching orders of Christ. And so I quoted the Great Commission to him. I said, here, Jesus says all authority. It's in Matthew chapter 28, verses 18 to 20. Jesus says, all authority has been given to me in heaven and earth. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things that I commanded you, and lo, I'm with you always, even to the end of the age. Amen. Jesus tells us to go and make disciples, to bring students up, and we need to be discipling people. You know, what a blessing this morning for, we call her sis in the family. And Bev, I'm not calling you sis, I'm calling Anna sis. That kind of confuses me sometimes when Danny calls you sis, because I'm thinking, which sis is he talking about? Because in our family we call Anna sis. But when sis said that Sydney was with her from Wednesday, JT spent some time with me this weekend, my grandson. Yesterday he went around the radio show with me, we worked on the water together. Mom and I and Jay took Joseph out to Illinois to meet his dad from Iowa, so we spent the day in the car together. It's great when your grandkids are able to be around you and you're able to disciple them. Sydney's learning things when she's with Anna. Thanksgiving time, she's learning. She's finding out what Grandma cooks, what she likes, how she does special things. And Bev's back there grinning because her kids have been with her, grandkids have been with her. But isn't it neat it's neat to disciple your family, but it's neat to disciple other people, amen? And Christ tells us to do that, but he also tells us to disciple, but he tells us to baptize. And I just looked at Randy and I said, Randy, I'm just doing what Jesus' last words on the earth were to do. And that was to go teach, preach, and baptize, basically. But here's the problem. I don't know if the church gets it. Jesus doesn't say, go out and tell them to come to church. He tells you to go. Somewhere along the line, we got messed up. We think that we have to. Our only thing is, if we can get them into church and let the preacher preach to them, and it's all over. It's our duty to go. Are you a goer or are you a sender? If you can't go, one of the things that we do here is a penny march. You know what that is? That's a sender. When we send money to Chris and Lauren and Natalie to help with her ministry, that's being a sender. When you all took up money and helped my wife go to Ireland this year, that's being a sender. The first years that I was here and I went to India, and I haven't been for a while and I want to go again, but when I go to India and you all give me money to go, you are being a sender because I'm able to go and make disciples. I'm able to go and teach and baptize people. I tell you now, that's something that's exciting this time of year in India. It's warm and it's nice, but they have the winter surf coming in. If anybody's been around the ocean, I've not been around the ocean. One time I was out there and baptizing these people and I fell down in the sand. I said, just leave me and we'll be fine. The guy from California said, no, Dan, you don't understand. The one that's coming in right now will kill you. It will suck you back out there. We've got to get you out of the sand. I don't care if you have to crawl in. Get out of that sand. I just laid down. I was enjoying it for a minute. And sure enough, here come a 25 or 30-foot wall of water, and it would have been right where I was at. And I got up and I go, wow. He goes, I told you to get up. So the next time, I didn't sink in the sand. The next baptism I did. What we do is we take them so far out on the dry sand, you'd wait for a small wave to come in, and when it came in, two of you dump them down and get them up and run in and wait for another small one to come in because you get these great big 25 and 50-foot walls of water coming in and crashing. It was awesome to baptize there in the Indian Ocean and do that. But I'm asking you this morning is, are you a goer or are you a sender? And then in Acts chapter 11 is where I want to go this morning. Acts chapter 11, we preached through Acts a couple years ago, but I like to look at this again. In Acts chapter 11 and verse 19, it says, now those who were scattered over persecution that rose over Stephen traveled as far as Phoenicia, Cyprus, and Antioch, preaching the word to no one but the Jews only. But some of them were men from Cyprus and Cyrene, and when they had come to Antioch, they spoke to the Hellenists, preaching the Lord Jesus. And the hand of the Lord was with them, and a great number believed and turned to the Lord. And the news of these things traveled the ears of the church in Jerusalem, and they sent out Barnabas, to go as far as Antioch. When he came and seen the grace of God, he was glad and encouraged them all with the purpose of heart that they should continue with the Lord. And he was a good man, full of the Holy Spirit and faith, and great many people were added to the Lord. Barnabas departed for Tarshish to seek Saul. When he had found him, he brought him to Antioch, and so as a whole year they assembled with the church and taught a great many people, and the disciples were first called Christians at Antioch. There's a lot in there, and I'm not done yet. I really want to get to another part of that. But I want to point out some things here. You brought up Mike. Mike's not here anymore. Mike's in Texas. When I was at Paynesville, Mike was here. And I counted Mike as a friend, and we kind of counted you guys as a sister church, even though we didn't do a whole lot together with Paynesville, but you all would send people to revival, we'd have folks come over here and that type of thing. But I really appreciated Mike, and Mike got you guys through some drastic times. There were some tough times. You all remember the girl that was killed when the trailer come around and hit her and the baby. You guys remember that? They're buried right over here. I believe that Mike Robinson was here for such a time as this. Dale, you guys went through Christie's time, I think, through that time too. Mike Robinson was here for a time, but he moved on. And for some of it, that was rough for him to move on. Because he was so well loved and well thought of in this community. Sometimes, you know, we had the Marble Hill fiasco. We had some good people that came through. We had some clowns that came through Marble Hill, but we had some good people that came through Marble Hill too that were nookies, and they came here for a time and they plugged in some of our churches and they left. There was persecution that scattered the early church. They were all in Jerusalem. God wanted the world, Jesus' marching order was to go into all the nations. They were kind of hanging around Jerusalem. And so persecution came after Stephen was killed, and the church had to disperse. Several of you here can tell of somebody that's had to leave this area because they've got a better job offer somewhere else, or their job's changed, or they've lost a job here and they need to go somewhere else. And you don't fully understand why that happens. You know, on the radio show this morning, I used the illustration of Benny and Dixie Ford. Dev can tell you they're good people, but they weren't church people. When they were here in Indiana, church was the last thing on Benny and Dixie Ford's mind. I just tell you, Denise and Becky are best friends. Becky was a wonderful person, Rick and them, really good friends, but Benny and Dixie just didn't do church. And if you brought up church, they changed the subject or something. It wasn't something they were comfortable with. They went to Tennessee, and Becky was involved in a Baptist church down there, and Benny and Dixie turned it on for the Lord. And you couldn't talk to Benny and Dixie Ford for 5 minutes when you went down there that they weren't talking about their church. They were talking about, Benny was talking about how he helped fix up the church, and they were talking about how that they'd done stuff with the group and everything else. And I'll be honest with you, I am thankful for Fayetteville Glades, Tennessee, for winning to Christ. Benny and Dixie Ford, they're friends of mine. And you know what? I get to see Benny and Dixie in heaven. When they died, they were devout Christians, and they were very much involved in their Baptist church down in Fairfield Glade, Tennessee. Some of you around here didn't want to see them move, but they went down there in retirement, and they got it. Sometimes God scatters people around the world for a reason. Other people I've seen have been involved in their church here locally in Indiana, but they really weren't really involved in the church. And all of a sudden their job changes and they go to another place, and then when you talk to them the next time, all they can talk about is what the Lord's doing in the church they're involved in. And you find out they're involved in student ministries and youth ministries and music ministries and other things, and you're thinking, well, they didn't do that here. Well, maybe God didn't want them here. Maybe he wanted them somewhere else to do it. So he dispersed the church. And then some of them, they had only been talking to Jews, and then some of them started talking to other people, and we see Hellenists and other Greeks and other Gentiles are starting to come, and the Jews that have got the world first, they're concerned, so they send Barnabas down to check it out and find out whether or not it's good. Barnabas tells them to continue in the faith. He thinks it's great. And here at Antioch, people are called Christians first. They've been called disciples up to that point. The reason why we wear the word Christian is because they were called Christians at Antioch. And then it says here, in those days the prophets came from Jerusalem to Antioch, and then one of them named Agabus stood up and showed with the Spirit there was going to be a great famine throughout all the world. And this happened in the days of Claudius Caesar. Then the disciples, each according to his own ability, determined to send relief to the brethren dwelling in Judea. This they did, and they sent it by the elders, to the elders, by the hands of Barnabas and Saul. So the idea of us doing missions by sending people is one thing. But the other idea is by us giving money and relief to other people. Do you realize the church did more at Katrina than what the government did? How many of you realize that? American Baptist Association here, there's some of the old guys that talk about going down to Katrina with our relief trailer. By the way, If there's any of you men that are interested in helping, we do have a relief trailer. It's housed at Columbus, Indiana, and that's something American Baptist men do. Here's the problem. A lot of the guys that did it are dead. So we need some younger guys that are willing to go. When I say younger, those guys will do it like in their 60s and 70s. So if you're in your 60s or 70s, you're the young part of that group. And we need some guys to do that. They have chainsaws on board, weed eaters, that type of thing, and they go and do that. So that's one thing that we've done. The other thing is, right now, what has happened in California, the church is going to have to rise up. The government can only do so much, and they only do so much. I will tell you this, in Paradise, there's a Christian church there. It burned to the ground. Most of the members lost everything they had. But they said at ICOM this last weekend, guess what? They're still having church. And they said the spirit of unity in that church right now is just fantastic. Had a little boy out in Norfolk, Oklahoma, called me a couple weeks ago, and he said, "Dan, I need to tell you something." I said, "What's that?" His name's Jonathan. Just a real neat little guy. He said, "Our church burnt to the ground." I said, "Oh, Jonathan, I'm sorry." He said, "I'm not." He said, "Our church was grouching, and there were a bunch of stoppers, and it was not going very well." He said, "You know what? I've seen unity like I've never seen it." That's coming out of a 15-year-old kid's mouth. He said, "The best thing that ever happened to us is our church burnt to the ground." He said, "We're excited. We're getting ready to build a new church." And he said, "Some good things are happening." He said, "I hate to see it happen." I got another friend from Oklahoma that preached a sermon at the Comanches, and he said, "When I came there," he said, "nobody got along." He said, "Business meetings were terrible. People griped and complained about what they were going to do to the church and how we were going to fix the church up or not fix the church up, fix the parsonage up or not fix it up." He said, "I want to tell you something, fellas." He said, "It only takes about 15 minutes of tornado and you don't have to worry about it." He said, "You have to do the ultimate remodel. You have to do a rebuild." He said, "I'm not recommending a tornado, but," he said, "it worked for us." He said, "We lost everything." He said, "Within 15 minutes, the church was gone, the parsonage was gone. A lot of people in our church was homeless because their houses were gone. But," he said, "I saw a spirit of unity like I've never seen before." And he said, "I'll tell you what," he said, "our people don't fight over the inessential things anymore." He said, "That tornado did us good." I just want to tell you guys something. Are you a goer or are you a sinner? This afternoon, some of you get the opportunity to go to a nursing home. That's a place a lot of people don't want to go, but it's a place that's needed to go. And I'll be honest with you, I've been blessed so many times at Hanover Nursing Center, and we go to give them a blessing, but I can tell you something. I always leave with a bigger blessing than what I do when I go. I just think about the ones that went on to be with Jesus that were our groupies that came down every time. Rick Rowley came down every time we were there. I had Rick pray, and it was just so fantastic to have Rick pray. And I guarantee you Rick would be praying for his nephew-in-law. It'd be a big deal for him. That would be on his heart. And little Jack came down, a little red-headed fella, and he loved "I Come to the Garden Alone." And he'd sing a little cracked voice. Last Sunday we see him alive. He sat there and he looked like he just couldn't hold his head up. We started singing "I Come to the Garden Alone." He perked his head up and he sang with all his might on that song. And he put his head back down. Next time we went to the nursing home, a month later, he was gone. He's with Jesus. And I told him, I said, "I'll tell you something. Jack's singing with all his heart now in heaven." Amen. And just think about the different ministries we're able to be in. On Wednesday night here, several of you helped out financially feeding the kids. And to see the excitement and some of the growth that we've seen with some of the kids and some of the things that are happening there, it's fantastic. And I'll close by saying this. Come, you thankful people, come. Raise the song of Harvest Home. I looked up there at that big screen this morning. It said, "First the blade and then the ear." I was thinking about Jerry and Wesley and Butch Bowman and ones that farmed and Bobby. They know when you watch them plant corn, they go out there and they dig around with their pocket knife, and that little corn is shooting that little, just a little blade off that little piece of corn, that little root going down. You go out there in the field and you check and see how many made it, how many didn't. And I've seen Dad do that several times. That little blade grows up into a stalk, and that stalk produces an ear. And then you see it, that little kernel of corn, you see great big ears of corn. Right now they're hanging down, the ones that are still haven't been harvested. We've seen a bountiful harvest. Personally, I was thinking about the blades. They're back there on Misty night. I think about the blades that are sitting here during BBS. We see the blades, we see them sprout. And some of us will never get to see the ears that they produce. But God bless every one of you that come to this church and help this church and help us do the ministries we do. There's some blades that were down in Guatemala that you will never see that Chris and Lauren planted. They got to see them sprout. Chris and Lauren won't even get to see the harvest until they get to heaven. But every one of you here that help with the penny march, that can put money in collection plate, and that's part of where we send our mission money to. Think about the blades that will happen and are currently happening will happen at Westport Baptist Youth Camp and camp at NCR this year. Think about the kids that went through camp this year that were the blade, a kid that was standing out next to the campfire at camp, and they got the picture of what it would be to be a youth minister, to be a pastor someday. I'm telling you, we need more of them. Camp Monte Blanco is in Bolivia. Got their newsletter last week. I opened it up, and Tim Ramsey is the leader of that group. His dad started it years ago. He said they had all these kids that kept coming from this one church. And Tim said, well, why are you coming from that area? We haven't had anybody from that area. And they said, well, this one young man is a youth minister, and he's told us to come to camp, so we come to camp because he comes to camp. Tim went and found that young man and began to talk to him. That young man made his commitment. He sprouted, his blade sprouted at that camp, at a campfire at Monte Blanco. And now, this last year, he had 16, 17 students that came to camp, and several of them committed their life to Christ. If you can't go, you can be a sinner. And thank you all for being sinners. It blesses us. It really does. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, Lord, I hope I've been able to make the point that you wanted me to make this morning. And Lord, several of us here can't physically go, maybe to a foreign country or cross-country mission, but you know that we can give money, and that might be a way we do it. We can pray for our missionaries that are doing work around the world. We do pray for the ones that are in the hot spots of the world. We pray for the ones that are going to be home now doing training, like Chris and Lauren and Natalie. We pray that you continue to watch over Westport Baptist Youth Camp and Camp at NCR and the other ministries that we support that are actually sprouting corn that's going to be gathered up someday. Lord, I pray right now that you'll just watch over this time and just bless it. Lord, if there's someone here that needs to make a decision or needs prayer, I pray that they'll come as we sing. Lord, watch over the ministry this afternoon at the nursing home. I do pray that you watch over the ones on the prayer list. And Lord, we're going to be careful to give you all the praise and all the glory. In Jesus' name we pray.